Charles Bronson, the Hollywood difficult man, left in the back of Extra then only a legacy of iconic films. He left a fortune that stirred deep feelings in his family. But why did his inheritance bring tears as opposed to smiles? Was it the size of his wealth, the manner he divided it, or the testimonies hidden inside? Stay with us to realize the fact in the back of Bronson's final gift to the ones he loved. Thoughtfulness comes. Wisely stay with us and find out the truth in the back of Bronson's final gift to the ones he loved. Charles Bronson, the Pennsylvania coal miner who drifted into films cast as a villain and have become a difficult confronted motion megastar, significantly in the popular Death Wish Vengeance films, has died. He turned into 81. Charles Bronson, acknowledged for his rugged attraction and excessive on-display presence, changed into more than just a Hollywood icon. With a profession that spanned over 4 decades, Bronson captivated audiences with his magnetic performances and had become synonymous with the difficult man character. With an emotionless face apparently chiseled from a quarry, he was a frog in a hand never some distance from the cause of an automatic. Charles Bronson became some of the huge screen's integral tough men. As tributes poured in after his loss of life at the age of 81, he changed into remembered for his brooding macho presence as an actor, his oddly self-deprecating sense of humor, and the superb, even tasteless violence of his movie output. Bronson died at Cedars-Sinai Hospital in Los Angeles, together with his 1/3 wife Kim, at his bedside. His fitness had deteriorated sharply during the last few weeks after a protracted struggle with Alzheimer's disorder. The son of a Pennsylvania coal miner, Bronson fell into appearing after the Second World War as an escape from his grim running a Liga heritage. From the beginning, he was pegged to play criminals, outcasts, and gunslingers. Without the aha to appears to qualify as a main man, an Italian newspaper nicknamed him Il Brutto, the Ugly One. He seemed destined to languish in smaller man-or-woman components. A trio of movies, The Magnificent Seven, The Great Escape, and The Dirty Dozen, though captured audiences' imaginations specifically in Europe. Alain Delon invited him to France to co-big name in Adieu l'ami in 1968, and Sergio Leone solid him in a career-defining position in Once Upon a Time in the West. Bronson so encapsulated the sturdy, silent type that it occasionally regarded entire hours might pass without him announcing a word. He was watching a movie with consternation when one of the actresses from the movie announced him a word. An episode of The Simpsons as soon as spoofed him by imagining a metropolis known as Bronson, Missouri, whose population stood menacingly indoors and broke their silence. Simple as to say such words as, "It ain't over." Michael Winner praised him as a very, very good actor, even though his variety changed into limited. Bronson once provided a extra sober assessment. "Someday I'd like a element in which I can lean my elbow against a mantelpiece and feature a cocktail." Unlike other Hollywood stars, Bronson's adventure wasn't that easy. At age 50, he returned to Hollywood as a celebrity. In a 1971 interview, he theorized on why the adventure had taken him goodbye. "Maybe I'm too masculine, casting directors solid of their personal or an idealized photograph. Social media mockery blasted that proof positive. Maybe I'm too masculine against that preference. Or an idealized photograph. Maybe I don't seem like each person's ideal." His youth gave no indication of his later repute. He became born Charles Bunchinsky because the 11th of 15 children of a coal miner and his spouse, both Lithuanian immigrants. Young Charles found out the artwork of survival in the difficult district of Scooptown, where you had nothing to lose because you misplaced it already. The Bunchinskys lived crowded in a shack, the youngsters wearing hand-me-downs from older siblings. At the age of 6, Charles became embarrassed to attend school in his sister's dress. Charles's father died whilst he became 10, and at 16, Charles observed his brothers into the mines. At once, Charles observed his brothers into the mines. He became paid $1 in keeping with ton of coal, and volunteered for perilous jobs because the pay became better. Like different toughs in Scooptown, he raised some hell and landed in jail for assault and robbery. He would possibly have stayed in the mines for the relaxation of his lifestyles, besides for World War II. Drafted in 1943, he served with the U.S. Army Air Corps inside the Pacific, reportedly as a tail gunner on a B-29. And, living, visible, the out-of-doors global, he vowed no longer to return to the squalor of Scooptown. He changed into interested in acting, not, he claimed, due to any artistic urge. He turned into impressed via the cash film stars could earn. He joined the Philadelphia Play and Players troupe, painting scenery and appearing some minor roles. At the Pasadena Playhouse School, Bronson stepped forward his diction, helping himself with the aid of selling Christmas playing cards and toys on avenue corners. Studio Scout saw him on the Playhouse, and he was solid as a gob inside the 1951 provider comedy You're Within the Navy Now, starring Gary Cooper. Bronson's first starring function came in 1958 with an 8-day exploitation film, Machine Gun Kelly. His reputation grew with astounding performances in The Magnificent Seven, The Great Escape, The Battle of the Bulge, The Sandpiper, and The Dirty Dozen. But real stardom eluded him, his hard-hewn face and brusque manner no longer fitting the Hollywood tradition for leading men. His maximum controversial movie came in 1974 with Death Wish. As an prosperous liberal architect, Bronson made 3 greater Death Wish movies, and in 1987 he defended them. I assume they provide pride for folks who are victimized by crime and look in vain for authorities to shield them, but I do not assume human beings try to imitate that type of component. Bronson may be as taciturn in interviews as he seemed on the screen. He remained aloof from the Hollywood scene. I even have lots of pals, and yet I don't have any. Bronson's own family existence became a true reflection of his particular and adventurous nature, packed with moments that were as unconventional and interesting as the person himself. Charles Bronson changed into Nevertheless in his early career years, while he met Harriet Tendler. The pair were members of the Plays and Players Beginner Theater Institution. When Bronson initially joined the institution, he had been inquisitive about decorations and scenery portray. Harriet became a Jewish woman and a dairy farmer's daughter. Charlie Bakinski became a Catholic and a former coal miner. However, he had become interested in performing with time and were given toward Tendler. On their first date, Bronson had best 4 cents in his pocket. The couple married years later with Tendler's father's reluctant consent. The two have become man and wife in 1949, and that they moved to California to chase larger goals as a pair. Bronson barely had sufficient to transport with, because out of the 5 suitcases they moved with, Tendler owned gadgets in 4.5 of them. In California, Bronson worked hard at perfecting his artwork. He and Tendler had been married for 15 years, till their divorce in 1965. They had 2 kids, Suzanne and Tony, earlier than divorcing. Bronson walked down the aisle a 2 at a time when his career became at its peak. He first commenced an affair along with his then-wife-to-be, Jill Ireland, who turned into marriage to David McCallum. Brown and Ireland later tied the knot in 1968. After NCIS big name David McCallum's marriage with Ireland ended, he faced some tough times. It changed into not till some 50 years later in 2016 that he unfolded on how the divorce affected him. McCallum mounted that he turned into a great deal, in a higher area. And he did no longer even maintain any grudge, whilst his ex-house left him for Bronson. The famous person, actor, and Bronson met on extraordinary escape, and via this he met Ireland. It became purported that Bronson as soon as informed McCallum on set that he might take his wife from him. However, this remained speculation for years. When McCallum became requested approximately this, he made it acknowledge that nothing like that occurred. He stated about Bronson, despite being amicable approximately his ex-wife's dating with Bronson, McCallum did admit that it changed into a hard length. He shared that he and Ireland were dad and mom to 3 youngsters. The pair adopted 3 kids, with Jason being the oldest. When their marriage ended, Ireland became granted custody of the youngsters, which triggered greater issue for McCallum. Jill Ireland, just like McCallum and Bronson, turned into an actress, seeking to make it huge within the enterprise. But love and romance had been never dominated out. He shares ensured his family became taken care of. Bronson did not forget his near buddies and enterprise companions. Walter Mirisch, a manufacturer he had labored with for years, turned into given 5% of the estate as a sign of their strong professional bond. Harold Bronson, a trusted companion in many of his commercial enterprise tasks, additionally received 5%. Both were honestly critical to him, and he made positive to acknowledge their roles in his existence. Bronson also supported charitable companies that supported loads to him. The Screen Actors Guild Foundation obtained 10%, showing his willpower to supporting others within the acting industry. He additionally donated 5% to the American Cancer Society, likely inspired through his personal conflict with lung cancers. These donations confirmed his preference to offer again and make a distinction, even after he was long gone. Rosen's wife, Jill Ireland, inherited the majority of his property. Bronson's youngsters, Tony and Zulika, additionally inherited a part of his property. Ireland died in 1990, and her estate turned into well worth an anticipated $40 million. Tony and Zulika inherited the majority of Ireland's estate, and additionally they inherited a portion of Bronson's estate. All of the data is now used to make verification of the figures in this letter, but none of the information was included in the letter's own section. Tony Bronson died in 2008, and his property turned into really worth an envisioned 10 million greenbacks. Zuleika Bronson remains alive, and he or she is the only heir to Bronson's estate. We're sure lots of you are quite curious to know that in any case these years, in which is Zulika? Her sister Katrina, who is an award-triumphing film director, has been on and off the Digicam. However, Zulika by no means, even as soon as seemed in public. One aspect that we've observed is for the time being, Zulika is living in Los Angeles, California. She is presently unmarried. Oh, she maintains her personal affairs and relationships personal due to the fact she favored to live a peaceful life, unfastened from media of public scrutiny.